Good evening, everybody. Good evening. It's Valerie Ling here, coming to you live. Awesome. I've been pondering some things this evening, and I wanted to present, excuse me, my thoughts about, and really they are my thoughts, very, very raw thoughts, uh, in terms of just having an observation as to how different people have been reacting to the COVID situation. And at first, I parsed it through personality, and I thought, is what I'm seeing a factor of personality? Is it a factor of station and status in life? Some people who are single versus people who live with other people reacting differently. But anyway, I came to a slight conclusion this evening, and I wanted to share this with you because you may find a point of connection or resonance with this, right? So, I've been thinking about what we've been experiencing. It's like the entire world is one big purple bruise at the moment. What I mean by that, when natural disasters happen in a particular community, or when we hear of news that a particular crime has happened, there's a degree that we are separated from that experience in that that's happening over there, and we feel sympathy and perhaps we feel compassion. We may feel anger, we may feel a sense of an externalized reaction and somewhat an empathic reaction as well, because we're observing as outsiders what's happening somewhere, right? And then from there, it informs us emotionally what we're feeling, and then comes a set of behaviors because we ourselves are not absorbed into that picture. What is happening now, right now, in terms of COVID-19 and it being a global pandemic, is that the wounding is happening to everybody at the same time. And so those who are helping others are also themselves receiving a wound as we watch things just implode, or it seems like things are imploding around us, and that we are not just observing things happening, but we are in the center of it as well. And I've been thinking about how this probably most closely aligns with what happens to communities when they encounter a natural disaster within their community. So, for example, if you had been through the New Zealand earthquakes or 9/11, or right, where you are actually a part of the scene where a disaster has happened, and you are both responding to the situation and responding to others' experiences of what's happening, as well as responding yourself in the situation. So when I say the world is like one big giant purple bruise, what I mean is that we're all experiencing the bruising and the wounding. And of course, every one of us is going to then respond in really different ways. The thing is that when this is happening, we'll start to dig into various psychological coping mechanisms or various representations. And I suspect, have a feeling, this is my hypothesis, because we're offering to other people what we ourselves are using to cope. Because remember, what I was saying is that the thing about COVID-19 is it's not something we're observing, it's actually something that we're going through as well. And so there is this blurring of wanting to be helpful and at the same time seeing things from our own lens. And that can often be a very difficult thing to do. So today I was pondering all of this, trying to think, how do we make sense of this? And I guess I've come up with an understanding for myself as to this is possibly how everybody is reacting, but we're all on kind of different timelines for where we're at. And we're possibly all trying to grab at things to help us to feel stable and cope, and then offering this to others. However, perhaps other people may be at different points in their response to what's happening. So, in a natural disaster, post the disaster, we often see that communities, by and large, come together for what is understood as being a post-traumatic growth experience. Now, that can filter to an individual, but basically, a post traumatic growth experience means that as a community, people generally come together to tell the story and to rebuild. And they have a deeper appreciation for purpose and meaning and relationships and, what it means to serve and give and rebuild and things like that. Right. So, eventually, post pandemic COVID-19, our roadmaps are all going to be rewritten for each of us. So let me use a very concrete example that may be a little bit understandable. So let's say that for me, one of the roles that I have is that I enjoy writing books. They're a hobby, really. But let's say if that was my primary role, right? At, right at this point in time, I'm trying to rewrite my maps actually for what does it actually mean? What does the written word mean now? What do people actually need? I particularly enjoy writing picture books for kids. And I've been thinking, gosh, none of the stuff that I've written, because I have like, little books that have not been published yet, they've all taken a different meaning now. The world is different. Kids are going to be looking at the world differently. I'm looking at the world differently. And there are these roadmaps that are being rewritten in terms of, what books are meaning now. Have you noticed, like people reading picture books out loud on Facebook? And so it's almost like post traumatic growth looks like this, that when something like a big global pandemic happens to the whole world, all of our roadmaps for where we are going, how we're thinking we're going to get there, gets rewritten. And for some of us, it actually provides an opportunity to ask some fundamental questions, which were, was that the roadmap that I wanted to be on anyway? Now that we've had this experience, what does it actually mean? And so some of us are asking those bigger questions. Now, when you're asking those bigger questions, you've also then got to attend to the grief and the loss and the emotional insight and awareness that comes from that. And the bigger that you're processing the impact on you, had a wonderful conversation today. We call it supervision with a psychologist. The person that I do supervision with has a different type of practice to what I have. I have a multidisciplinary practice, and she does not. And she gave me the feedback that for me, I'm rewriting scripts that are so broad because I'm questioning so many different things now that COVID-19 has happened. So for some of us, this is a situation. For all of us, we are rewriting scripts. For some of us, we are actually rewriting more fundamental scripts, asking the bigger questions of, is this the job that I wanted to do in the first place? Is that the organization that I belong to? Are these the relationships that I'm left with now that we're all at home? So those things will take time, and it will take a degree of emotional processing, right? So searching for meaning, questioning our purpose. This can be part of the process. Now, as we go through this, and as we come out of this process of grief and loss, whatever that timeline is, and questioning and making sense of what we're experiencing, and then looking forward and saying, what does this roadmap now look like going forward now that I've had COVID-19? Now, it's important to say that in this traumatic experience, some of us are going to have different vulnerabilities to what we're experiencing. Some of us who have have had personal encounters with death and loss and have lost people to illness. Those of us who are at the front line of caring and seeing the ramifications of people who are really at danger for COVID-19. Those of us who have had other significantly traumatic experiences of being bullied at our workplace, of being retrenched multiple times before, of living, literally from dollar to dollar. We're all going to have different vulnerabilities when we encounter COVID-19. And so our vulnerabilities, our emotional vulnerabilities, are absolutely going to be different to others. It's a little bit like Little Red Riding Hood before she met the big bad wolf, right? Prior to that, Little Red Riding Hood would carry her little basket, jump for joy to go and see Grandma, never questioned, never looked left or right, assumed that Grandma would open the door. Now, wait, somebody should write another story. Maybe there already is. Little Red Riding Hood, after she met the big bad wolf, um, and he eat the grandma, and then like grandma had to come out of the belly. Man, that is traumatic stuff. Probably would not skip and hop gleefully down the path to grandma's house anymore. She'd probably take a lot longer. She'd probably not quite be so um, open to taking baked goods to grandma, right? So the world fundamentally changes on its axis when we've had these different experiences. And so that's okay. That's all right to remember that as you're going through this and as you're watching your friends and your family go through this, it's probably important to say that it's going to be a big deal for all of us. And for some of us, that big deal is not quite apparent to the naked eye, I suppose. Now, these roadmaps are being rewritten through our own vulnerabilities, through our own lenses, and we're making sense of it. Now comes the resilience and self-care movement. So I'd like to suggest that, hang on. So that's growth. Grit. Now let's talk about grit. Grit comes in once. So grit is a psychological concept that basically says that, for some people, endurance in the face of adversity comes from having a gritty posture, if you like. That is, let's say with me, if I was particularly a gritty author, I would, once I've recast the map and say, okay, look, this is still a worthwhile pursuit. These are the reasons for what I'm doing it. Children's. So when I was writing picture books, for me, the philosophy was I really wanted to write things that both entertained and nourished a child's heart. I didn't want to write particularly moralistic books or books with a particular point, but they were just enchanting tales. Now, if I believe that, then the gritty part of me would say that is still a worthwhile long-term direction or a goal to head towards. In COVID-19 situations, what are all the different pathways to get there? And being able to say that, oh, okay, there are these multiple ways to get there. So, if I lost a job or if writing books doesn't earn you any income, unless you write like something that sells 1 million copies. Did you know that? You'd be lucky to get $1 a book. So, if that. I got distracted by the $1 a book. Anyways, I might have to wash dishes. I might have to stack boxes. I might have to Uber drive. I might have to Uber Eats deliveries. I might have to do these multiple things, live really simply, eat bread and toast, downsize. If that was a particular gritty path that I thought that I wanted to go and I'd have these multiple ways to get there, right? Resilience is the ability as you go through, is a skill as you go through a gritty path and you fall down to pick yourself back up again. As you fall down to pick yourself up again, right? As you get the rejection letter, I got one. I submitted 2 manuscripts, picture book manuscripts to a publishing house, and I got 1 rejection. Not sure about the other one. Is, to say, okay, that's the roadmap. This is the goal. These are the different ways to get the goal. This one I fell down, dust myself off, pick myself up. So that resilient, comes from all the kind of resourcing that is required to have a resilient mindset. Staying connected, being able to problem solve, watching yourself talk, figuring out positive help-seeking behavior, your mental mind state and things like that with adversity. So resilience is that thing that, okay, we're on a gritty path. I fall down. Self-care. I've really done nothing. Self-care, I think, is like the one part of the resourcing, like as you fall down and you pick yourself up, is the thing of when you fall down to be able to say, hey, let's take care of ourselves here. This is like you're in for the long haul. Pull back, pacing, rest, eat, exercise. These are the things that you're going to need to actually be part of the resourcing picture to maintain a resilient mindset towards a gritty goal as you've recasted the post-traumatic growth roadmaps. Right. So self-care is that thing of your sleep, your exercise, you're staying connected, and things like that. Right. So what I'm finding is that different people are inserting these different things and like trying to give out antidotes to what people are happening, but actually, they're all part, I think, and in my opinion, they're all part of a process of what individuals are going through as we rewrite new meaning, figure out if the pathway that we're on is the one that we want to stick to, figuring out what all the different ways that we can get there, building a resilient posture to actually endure the difficulty that's going to come from trying those different pathways, not working, try another one. And self-care is almost like the waxing of, wiping down, I don't know, the horse. Now I'm thinking of a horse. Never ridden a horse. Well, I have ridden a horse. I don't know what it is to take care of a horse, but I've always seen them like wipe down the horse and brush them and things like that. Is that thing of the maintenance, right, of the hardware and the software and ensuring that it's able to do all these other things. So basically, don't be in a hurry to say that you're not being resilient, because you might still be processing the maps. You might still be trying to figure that out. You might still be grieving that some of this has changed. Don't be in a hurry to see that, it's always got to be up, right? I think there's a myth to think that resilience is about quickly bouncing back. I think resilience is about adaptively bouncing back. So being able to adapt to the situation, and there's no timeline on that, right? It actually really just depends, because part of it is figuring out the resources that you need. And then comes the self-care bit. So that's about as far as I got in my thinking. Do not have a PhD on this topic, but I'm hoping that maybe this has sparked some thoughts for you as well. Take care.